Hello, new students. My name is Bethany Scott, and I am the Title IX coordinator here at CBU, and I am excited to be among the many to welcome you here. We're going to talk a little bit about Title IX today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Title IX is. We're going to go through some definitions, talk about our process here at CBU, and then I'll give you some resources. I know that sometimes this topic can be a hard topic, so I just want to make sure that you know that your first year experience leaders are here should you need to talk, as am I. My office is always open to you, and same with our staff and faculty. So if this brings about something that is hard for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We want to walk this with you. So what is Title IX? Title IX is a federal mandate that seeks to eliminate barriers to educational programming. And it's a federal mandate, so it's for any educational institution receiving federal funding, K-12 through higher ed. This is CBU's commitment, which is to provide a learning, working, and living environment that promotes personal integrity, civility, and mutual respect, free of discrimination on the basis of sex. Okay, this slide talks about the fact that some of the behaviors we're going to talk about today do not align with our values as an institution, and they don't align with the standard of student conduct. We know that, but we also know that these behaviors are happening in and among our community. So I am grateful that we get to have real and honest conversations, but we also want our students to know that the expectation is that the behavior of our students would align with our values and with our standard of student conduct. So there are 3 things CBU must do when we learn of a potential instance of sexual discrimination. And those 3 things are to stop the harassment, to remedy the effects, and to prevent the reoccurrence as much as we possibly can. I'm going to show you a few statistics here. These are federal statistics. They're not institutional statistics, but I still think they're good for all of us to be aware of. So 1 in 5 women and 1 in 16 men are sexually assaulted in college. And then again, this is a federal statistic, but I think it's another one that's really important for us. I think a lot of people think that if they're always with their friends, or if they make sure that they go to the bathroom with someone or always with someone, that they'll be okay. But the reality is that 80% of women who are sexually assaulted actually know their perpetrator. So it's a friend of a friend, an acquaintance, even someone that they're dating. So something for all of us to be aware of. Okay, so let's go into some definitions here. The reporting party is the person to whom the sexual misconduct allegedly happened. This used to say victim here, but we, along with many other educational institutions, have gone away from that word because we felt like it insinuated that a decision had already been made, and we want anyone involved in our process to understand that we know that there are 2 sides to every story. So we use the word reporting party and then respondent, the person who allegedly committed the sexual misconduct. Okay, so sexual harassment is any unwanted sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or visual, verbal, or physical conduct of a sexual nature. And there are 4 types of sexual harassment that I want to talk to you about. You could probably give me some examples of these. I'll give you a few examples of each. So physical, verbal, nonverbal, and visual. So physical would be things like unwanted touching, uninvited invasion of space. That could even be getting in someone's way, blocking their path with the intent to make a sexual advance. Verbal would be things like inappropriate jokes or inappropriate stories. It could also be continually asking someone out when they've said that they're not interested. Nonverbal would be things like inappropriate hand gestures, inappropriate facial expressions like kissing, making a kissing face, or winking, again, with the intent of a sexual advance. And then visual would be things like pictures, posters, calendars. That also takes me to the next area, which is social media. Not surprisingly, we are always on our phones in this generation, so this is an area where we are seeing growth in the Title IX world. So this would be sexually suggestive electronic postings, including pictures, videos, comments, conversations, and this would be on any form of social media. The next definition is sexual assault or sexual violence, which is any actual or threatened non-consensual sex act. And there are two categories under here. The first is intimate partner violence and then domestic violence. and there are three types of abuse underneath these categories. So physical abuse, this would be things like hitting, kicking, scratching, choking. Emotional abuse, things like insults, threats, humiliation, intimidation, and then sexual abuse, attempted rape, coercion, things like that. And on the last slide, it said that once we get to the domestic violence definition, that's when it becomes a felony or a misdemeanor. Another thing I want to say about this is that intent is based on the receiver. So a lot of times we can have someone say, well, I didn't intend to hurt that person, or I didn't intend to humiliate them. But intent is based on the receiver, which is an important piece of information to all of us, for all of us to be aware of. Stalking is engaging in a course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to fear for his or her safety or the safety of others, or suffer substantial emotional distress. So what I want to call your attention to in this slide is a reasonable person. So that would be if I were to take 10 people from the room and ask them or describe a behavior for them, and they would say, yeah, that would cause me to fear for my safety or for my friend's safety. That would be a reasonable person standard. So we're not saying, is the reporting party or is the responding party a reasonable person? We're saying, how would a reasonable person respond in this type of situation? Okay, so not surprisingly, California is one of the first to become an affirmative consent state. So this is defined as conscious and voluntary agreement to engage in sexual activity. So this means that consent has to be ongoing throughout sexual activity. It has to be communicated, and it has to be mutually understandable. Silence does not equal consent. A lack of protest doesn't equal consent. Consent to one form of sexual activity does not equal consent to another. And previous consent to sexual activity does not equal consent another time. This also covers minors, mentally disabled, and it covers people who are incapacitated by the use of drugs and alcohol. So it's really important for all of us to understand that the use of drugs and alcohol will never serve as an excuse for this type of behavior. Something I think is really important for all of our students to know. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our process here at CBU. So who is responsible to report? Technically all of us are responsible, but you as students are not mandated reporters. Almost all of our staff and faculty are mandated reporters. There are a few exceptions to that. Our Dean of Spiritual Life and some of the staff in the Spiritual Life office are confidential resources, as are the counselors at the Counseling Center. But everyone else in terms of staff and faculty are mandated reporters. If you know something, what should you report? I want you to report factual information. So dates, times, places, the who, what, when, where, if possible. And then where should you report? Ultimately, my office is the office that we'll need to know in the end. But if you feel more comfortable talking to your first year experience leader or an RA or a faculty member or a staff member or even safety services, that is great. It will end up on my desk in the end. But again, my office is always open to you as well. I want to tell you a little bit about the Title IX process at CBU. So you'll see here, the first thing that we do when we receive a complaint is called immediate intervention. And this is basically us separating the parties as much as we can. So we will almost always put a no contact order in place. And then if the reporting party and responding party have a class together, have chapel together, work together, or live in the same living area, we will do a modification of schedules. So we can temporarily relocate someone or temporarily remove them from a class. We can modify work schedules, things like that. The next thing that we do is an investigation, and we have about 15 or 16 investigators on campus who are full-time staff and faculty that are also trained in Title IX investigations. And their job in the investigation is to talk to the reporting party, the responding party, and then any witnesses that would maybe have seen the incident, or maybe it's a roommate of a reporting party who the reporting party talked to right away after the incident. And the investigator's job is to be a neutral fact finder. They are simply collecting all of the information. The standard that we use here at CBU when doing an investigation and making a decision in the end is the preponderance of evidence. So is it more likely than not that a Title IX violation occurred? And my office is simply responsible for saying, is it more likely than not that we have enough evidence here to send this to a hearing? So my office is not a decision-making office. It's simply a collection of information. If the evidence does say, yeah, this is warranting a hearing, then it will go to a hearing board. It goes to the Director of Student Conduct, Mr. Casey Tilton, who will schedule a hearing board. The hearing board will then do exactly that, hear the case, and then they are the deciding body as to whether or not a Title IX violation occurred. And if they say yes, we believe a Title IX violation occurred, then they are also the body that will impose sanctions. And that could be things like loss of privilege. It could be online courses, educational courses. It can mean time away from the institution. We don't like to go there, but there are situations where that is necessary. What I want you all to know as students about retaliation is that CBU, it's strictly forbidden. It's not something that we tolerate. We take it very seriously. We want anyone who is involved in a Title IX process to know that they are safe. So that includes both the reporting party, the responding party, and any witnesses. And we take it very seriously, so much so that if retaliation were to happen, it could result in, again, time away from the institution. So what should you do if someone comes to you and tells you that they have been the victim of a Title IX situation? The first thing I want you to do is just listen. This is not an easy thing to talk about, as I'm sure you can guess that. So just listening and being a safe space for people is so important. If you could avoid judging and blaming, that's always very helpful. I think it's really easy from the outside looking in to think things like, what were you thinking, or why did you go there? But that doesn't help you to be a safe space, and it doesn't help them when wanting to confide in you. And then don't suggest possible outcomes. Don't promise anything that you can't keep. Okay, so what happens if you find yourself in a situation where you think a Title IX violation could be happening, or you think a harassing or an assaulting behavior could be happening? We talked a little earlier about the fact that we are currently living in a generation where we are always behind our screens. So one thing that really helps is to actually say something, to be direct, to say something out loud, like, hey, knock it off, leave that person alone. If you find yourself in a situation where you think, gosh, this is bigger than me, get some friends to help you and say, hey, can you go get help for the possible victim? I'm going to stay here and I'm going to distract the possible perpetrator. And that could look like spilling a drink if you're at a party, or even just going and introducing yourself and saying, hey, are you in my such and such class? No one is responsible to do everything, but we are all responsible to do something to keep our campus safe. Okay, the last piece I have for you here is just some resources. These are on and off campus resources. You all should have received a booklet when you got here, a Title IX booklet, and all of these are in there. It's also on our website, and should you ever need them, again, your first year experience leaders are a great resource for you as well. And then the last couple of things here. So in summary, what do I want you to remember? I want you to remember that if anyone comes to you to confide in you about a situation they may have been in, I just ask that you listen, that you be supportive, that you be a safe space. I hope that you'll say something, that you'll do something. Again, we all are responsible to helping keep our campus safe. I want you to know that we're going to do something. We won't sit idly by. We will do an investigation. I want to encourage you to be above reproach yourself. Think about the jokes you're telling or the things that you're putting on social media, and ask yourself if they would be offensive to anyone. And then get involved and be informed in which you're doing by getting to participate in this class.